Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. Hey, just yesterday at Shrewsbury Assembly, Pastor Nabil in our Rebuild series talked about how you face opposition. How do you handle conflict? How do you handle temptation? How do you handle when things don't go perfectly? And there's so much that we can learn from the Bible about how to handle specifically conflict between people. And so this week, I felt it would be appropriate and important for us to look at a couple examples from the Word of God on what people did in a way that was honoring God to work through conflict. Now, because stories can be long in the Bible, I'm not going to read the entirety of it this week. I might give you an overview, but what I really encourage you to do in some of your quiet time with the Lord is to maybe take some moments and go back and read that chapter or read those several chapters that give you the full picture of the story. Today's example is a perfect example of that because you could potentially read several chapters to get the full idea, but I'm going to wrap it up a little bit for you in a short summary. I want to talk to you about Joseph. There's many Josephs in the Bible, so which one are you talking about, Sarah? I'm talking about the one in the book of Genesis. Quick overview, you may know that Joseph was a son of Jacob. He had a lot of brothers. And early on in his story that's recorded in the book of Genesis, we discover that his brothers began to get jealous. Joseph played a part in that. I mean, he started to tell them of these dreams he had that he was going to reign over them, is the way they interpreted it. His father gave him a coat of many colors. Maybe you've heard that Sunday school story. And so favoritism may have been an issue, and jealousy formed, hatred formed, anger formed. And we see these brothers turn on Joseph and really desert him, and he's sold into slavery. He's taken over by others. His story continues through the book of Genesis. We see he ends up in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him. He resists the temptation, and then he gets thrown in jail again. Things are not looking good for Joseph. And yet in many ways, you could look at his life and say, but he was trying to honor God. You know, he was receiving these dreams from God. He was simply sharing them. He was resisting temptation, honoring God. Why are bad things happening? And you know what? That's such an interesting question. Following God does not guarantee that your life will be hurt-free or pain-free. It simply means that we have a God who walks with us. That really he puts our focus on things that are eternal, not just the temporary struggles that we face in this world. But we all know that the temporary struggles we do face in this world can be tremendously painful and hard. And it's in those moments that instead of blaming God, it's in those moments instead of holding grudges or holding on to resentment that we really have opportunities to live out our relationship with God. And we see this beautifully in the life of Joseph. His story continues, and he finds himself, by the grace of God, in a position of power many, many, many years later. And now he's in power, and now his brothers, the same brothers who betrayed him, the same brothers who turned their back on him, the same brothers that judged him and mistreated him, are in need. And they come to this person in power for help, not realizing it is the brother they betrayed. We see an interesting exchange, some cat and mouse a little bit there going on, but we come to a point where the Bible tells us that Joseph could not contain the secret of his identity any longer. And I really view it as it like erupts out of him. This is found in the book of Genesis, chapter 45. Listen to what we discover in verse 1. It says, Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. I mean, really, in their mind, this man had come back from the dead. They thought he was dead and gone years ago. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer. And he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother," here we go, "whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives." It's so interesting what time with the Lord will do to our perspective. If Joseph had had this encounter with his brothers maybe a year after they first sold him into slavery, or maybe right after he got thrown in prison because of Potiphar's wife, or in some of those low moments, I don't know how he would have reacted and responded. But what I gather from his life as you read through it is that Joseph had years to really think and process and potentially speak to the Lord about this. And in those years, Joseph didn't get more and more embittered, as some of us do. He got more and more forgiving, as I'm assuming he understood what forgiveness was. We see him here grace-filled. We see that somewhere along the journey, a journey he went, somewhere along the journey, he had already settled in his heart forgiveness for those that had betrayed him, forgiveness for those who had come against him. It is amazing what the presence of God can do in our life. And I want to challenge you as we begin this week talking about how to deal with opposition, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with mistreatment, how to deal with whatever, is that one option, a very biblical option, is that instead of feeling like we have to go toe to toe with the person who's hurting us or coming against us, is we can actually go to God. We can actually spend time with the Lord and ask for his perspective. Forgiveness is actually possible in your encounters with the Lord and doesn't have to only happen in your encounters with the person. There's a beautiful thing when you get to a place where you can forgive someone in your heart, potentially before they even ask. We see a young man, Joseph, here who is not laden with bitterness or longings for revenge. Instead, out of this grace erupting out of him, he's saying, hey, you know what I see here? God orchestrated this. Yes, you did things and they were wrong. But the God who is sovereign, the God who is good, the God who is in control, now I see he allowed those things for my good. And now I'm in a position that those very same things, I can help spread that good for you. And we see that he actually is part of saving, rescuing his brothers and his family from the famine that was ravishing the land. These are miraculous things that God can do in a heart. I know that for some of you, there might be bitterness that has gone for years, decades within your family or within another environment, a friend group that you've been in. I'm sure you've been hurt very deeply. Have you gone to God? Have you asked the Lord for his perspective? Have you sought forgiveness before they deserved it or earned it? Because let me tell you, they never will. But you can free yourself from the ravaging effects that these sins have on us when we have unforgiveness, hatred, bitterness, jealousy, all these things, getting even, revenge. We can actually heal from that when we hand that to God and say, God, let me see this through your perspective. Forgiveness is a gift that we give others, but we also receive in the giving. And so as you think about some conflicts that maybe you're facing today, some hardships, maybe some trivial things, maybe some things that have been decades in the making, I encourage you to spend time with the Lord today and to talk to him and to say, God, would you give me a new perspective? How can I honor you in this? How can I trust, like Joseph discovered, how can I trust that you actually have a bigger plan? That you're doing things in me, you're doing things through this hardship that I'm facing. God, what are you doing? Let me see. And see what God might show you, what he might reveal to you, what he might heal in you, that you could be a catalyst of reconciliation in that relationship. Hey, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth.